All right, good afternoon, and I'd like to bring the regular afternoon meeting of Township Council to order. And the first item is to adopt and receive the agenda items. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson and second by Councillor Davis. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. The next item is the adoption of the minutes, the regular afternoon council meeting of October 1st and the special council meeting of November the 6th. Councillor Ferguson and second, Councillor Davis. Any errors or omissions? All those in favor? Opposed, carried. And now need a motion to resolve into special closed meeting for the items on the agenda. And are there any on-table items? No. Okay, so Councillor... No, I'm just asking on table. I'll get in the list. Councillor Richter?
Yes, I'd like to add a legal item.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davis?
I had two, a property and a legal, please.
Legal, okay. And Councillor Long? Property. Thank you. So with that,
just to clarify, there was some on-table items.
Oh, there was. Oh, one on table. Okay, I haven't seen that yet. Okay, thank you. So on the agenda, on table, and those four items that were mentioned. So with that, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. We now resolve into special closed. Thank you.
Who else would have been the front runner then?
All right, good afternoon. We'll now reconvene the regular afternoon meeting of Township Council. And thank you for your patience. We're busy with Douglas Day celebrations at noon, and our meeting started a little bit later than we normally would have, but we're here. So we're going to go back into the agenda. So D, there are no presentations, no delegations, so we go straight to reports to Council. The first one is F1, it's 2018 local government election official results. And if I could have a motion to receive. Councillor Ferguson, second by Councillor Davis. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend our staff and particularly our elections officers for all the advanced voting opportunities that were provided this time around. I heard nothing but good things from the community about it, and I hope we can keep it going, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Whitmarsh.
Yeah, just a question through your worship to staff. On that topic of advanced voting, I certainly do appreciate the number of opportunities, and obviously we had a significant uptick in the number of people voting in the advanced polls. Is it possible to consider having an advance, at least one opportunity, between 2 and 3 weeks out of the election? I ran into a lot of people that were gone for a 2-week period prior to the election. The advanced polls were only available 10 days, starting 10 days out, and many of them were unable to vote because of that. And I'm wondering if there could at least be one that would say anywhere from 14 to 17 days out to give at least that one opportunity.
Theoretically possible, Your Worship. It's a bit of a challenge in that there's a time frame provided by the province as to when certain events must take place. One of those events is actually setting of the ballot. We do that by way of pulling the names. So from the time of pulling the names, it takes a bit of time to actually get the ballots up and get the advertisements done. So subject to that restriction, we can try to move it a little bit earlier, but it may be in the area of days, not weeks.
I think Surrey had it on the Thanksgiving weekend Saturday, and that's probably about the earliest we could do. When I talked to Mr. Wilson about that, and there were those constraints, so probably that'd be about the earliest we could do. And that would,
right, but that still might get us close to 2 weeks ahead instead of 10 days.
Yeah, that would add a few more days. Yeah.
14 days instead of 10, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Work on that for next time. Councillor Woodward?
Yeah, just a question to staff. When is the appropriate time to talk about dealing with the signage issue that we experienced during the campaign? I noted in the report tremendous amount of TL resources spent dealing with election signs. Could I get the amount, or is there like what does tremendous amount mean? And then when is the appropriate time to try to amend that and deal with that? Because I don't want to leave it for 3.5 years.
The latter question is the easier one. Staff are now working on some bylaw updates. Those bylaw updates as to the election sign bylaw, the election bylaw, which includes signage, is something that we will probably be bringing in the first part of the 2019 year. The reason for that is we're canvassing what other communities did. Other communities, for example, did charge a fee for signs to be reclaimed. We thought that was a nice start. Unfortunately, those signs were never reclaimed. So we're looking at all of the communities and options that we have. Our cost, we'll have to quantify it for you dollars, but effectively for about 30 days prior to the election, I'll say 3 weeks, we had effectively 2 staff members policing the sign costs entirely, and they were actually then collecting the signs and taking them to a location and then trying to contact people to recover the signs, and then following that it was a matter of disposing of the signs. So it was significant. We can probably quantify that to you and provide you that information when we bring the sign bylaw back.
One more question. I also wanted, before I forget, to thank Bob Wilson again, and I couldn't get a firm commitment that he had one more election that he would be willing to do for us. So I was still looking for that firm commitment. And also, one of the comments I have the feedback from, also mentioned in the report, is that the Trinity Western advanced voting opportunity turned into a more general advanced voting opportunity than anticipated because it's a couple days prior to a voting day, and if they had plans for Saturday. Wonder if it's appropriate to look at reverting back to having one more at the civic facility a few days prior to the election with a more general central location, and providing the Trinity Western advanced voting a little earlier in the cycle, if that's an appropriate piece of feedback to give now.
No, that's appropriate.
Make a note for that for 2022.
That's appropriate, thank you. That's part of our upcoming work program, is to actually look at, I guess, the 2 things, locations, but also standardizing the voting hours. We noticed that because there were some variations between polling stations, it caused some complications. And Mr. Wilson is, I suppose, looking at all options. Being a bit of a celebrity, he may be coerced by the municipalities. However, he's pointed out that he also likes to winter in the warmer climates, and this may be affecting his Martini quotient, so it may be difficult to get him to come back next year, or next election.
Fair enough. Thank you again.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I also want to echo the comments made by some of my colleagues. And when I did talk to Mr. Wilson, he said many more elections, so that's good to know. I also wanted to ask it's an interesting kind of question, how far, if it's kind of a speculative, how far away we or the members of the province or UBCM, even the FCM, from something like a electronic ballot in the future? I don't know if anybody can answer that, but I was just wondering, I know it's been explored at other levels, but how far we're away, if I may.
Mr. Mackin.
Your Worship, it's a bit of a theoretical question, I suppose, at this point. We don't have any jurisdiction directly. It would take provincial legislation, but because of security concerns, I guess theoretically it could be done at this point. But as we're seeing with such things as plebiscites and whatnot, it's a bit of a challenge. Our best guess would probably be we're still a decade away.
Thank you.
So you'll still be running, Councillor Ferguson?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
No, that's a given.
That's right. Councillor Richter.
Just to follow up on the comments on the sign bylaw, just for staff's reference, I think the having the signs back, the 20 meters from the intersections was a good thing, but I think it was very problematic, the requirement to have signs 2 meters from the curb and 1 meter from sidewalks, and that basically eliminated vast swaths of the township where there's the curb and the sidewalk close to the curb, and then you couldn't get your sign further out. So I'm wondering about that one being revisited. And also, too, what I would like to see is some sort of a limit on the number of signs that you can put in one location. So I think 3 in one location is fine. I don't think we need to have 10 in one location for each candidate.
Okay, so you can take that as direction to...
Both issues, the sign locations are certainly under consideration, Your Worship. There's a number of areas that were inadvertently excluded from being able to have signs because of the geometry, and as well as we move into the issue of a number of signs, that's something we'll probably touch upon. It's a bit trickier because then we could be perceived as restricting the right of expression, but we can certainly try to adjust it, and that's something we can come back to you with.
Thank you. All right, Councillor Kunst.
Just one question, and it was something that some of the older people asked me about because they don't have access to the internet or they weren't on their computer. But the results didn't show up on the news channel, so they were waiting all night to find out, who won. So I was just kind of wondering why some of the results didn't show up, on the news, global or.
Your Worship, it's an interesting situation. We publish the results as soon as they're available. Then it's up to the news media outlets to do with them as they see fit. traditionally, the Fraser Valley doesn't get as strong coverage as other areas, so there may have been some isolated coverage that went by the screen very quickly, but because the results were, I guess, fairly decisive, they tend to focus on those areas where there was more controversy and closer races or surprise or upsets. So it's something we try to communicate to the media outlets about, but it's something that we have no direct jurisdiction over.
Thank you. I thought it was because you were counting them yourself.
Well, Mr. Wilson was actually filling them out and we were counting them. That's right, Your Worship.
I thought it was happening. Okay. All right, and I echo Council's sentiments here. I thank Mr. Wilson for his help this time. He did an excellent job, and you've been here 3 times, and you've won all 3 elections. How do you like that, eh? All right, so I'm going to call the question on F1. This is for a receipt. Okay, so. Okay, just leave it there, and we'll figure this out. Okay. Okay. It shows unanimous consent. So the light's not working. So it could be just on your. It's not lighting up. So we'll check with staff. Hopefully the opposed works if ever you need that one. All right. Next one's F2, and that's the proposed 2019 council calendar. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Arneson, second by Councillor Davis. Any discussion on the calendar? Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to inquire as to whether 2 meetings a month is enough. Because we seem to be going longer and later in our meetings, so I was just wondering what the feeling around the table was.
Well, I'm just going to ask Mr. Backen. I know we did have a couple of meetings that went long, but overall, through the term, and I noticed when we had more meetings the first term, we did also have some meetings that went late. But how does it compare to other terms and late meetings? I know we had.
Your Worship, there was we compile average statistics, and it showed that actually most meetings were within the parameters. There were a few longer meetings, as was referenced, and that sometimes is unavoidable due to workflow. As we project the volumes coming up, we're not sensing that there'll be as many reports or planning and land use matters. There's certainly a lot in the system, but we think they'll moderate a bit. My suggestion is that we may wish to revisit after we've had a bit of a run at it and see how it goes, and we can always add more meetings. We, for example, also we have sensitive issues, one of which is coming up tonight, that sometimes have to have their own meetings or meetings on a separate night. So that's something that could actually help because it's a very popular topic.
Okay. Any other comments from council? Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll call the question on F2. Okay. And that carries unanimously. Move to F3, Agricultural Land Commission application number 100365. This is Palmer at 22822 88th Avenue. And this is a referral to the Agricultural Land Commission for non-farm uses. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, seconder. Councillor Kunst, any discussion on F3? Seeing none, I'll call the question. And the motion carries with Councillor Arneson opposed. So did your light work on this one?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. So we know that works. Great. Thank you. F4 is a non-farm use soil deposit application 22384 64 Avenue. And the recommendation from from staff is that council not refer the non-farm use soil application or deposit application for 22384 64 Avenue to the Agricultural Land Commission and direct staff not to process the application. Councillor Ferguson, seconder. Councillor Arneson. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question.
Now, if you're
in favor, then you're supporting not to refer it. If you okay. Carries unanimously. Move on to Agricultural Land Commission application number 100358, Bain, 1270 208th Street. And this is to advise the Agricultural Land Commission that the subdivision application complies with the minimum parcel size. Could I have a motion, please? Councillor Whitmarsh, a seconder. Need a second. Councillor, I need a second on this one to get on the table. Councillor Kunst, discussion on F5. Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I just wanted to verify with staff that this will create a panhandle lot. That's what it looks like. Is that true?
Mr. Seffi?
Your Worship, the panhandle is
on a temporary basis, and it's not really a panhandle per se, because the intent is for a private easement over one lot to provide access to the other until such time as a public road is constructed at the back of the properties, as you can see on this slide.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Woodward.
Yeah, I just want to clarify that if that is the intent to eventually build this road and we're getting cash in lieu to construct that road, and that road goes in 10, 15, 20 years from now, I just want to clarify that the taxpayer or some other fund would be required to come up with the difference. Is that correct?
Mr. Seffi or Ms. Sinclair?
Thank you, Your Worship. The application at this stage, Your Worship, is a referral to the Land Commission, subject to Council's endorsement for the referral and the Land Commission's approval. Then they will have to comply with the provisions of the Township's bylaws, including the servicing bylaw, which provides for cash in lieu, as well as construction, whichever is deemed to be appropriate. And in this case, I would suggest that the cash in lieu option would be most appropriate if it reaches that stage.
Thank you. Any further discussion on F5? So I'll call a question. And the motion carries with Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Richter, Councillor Arneson, Councillor Davis opposed. And move on to correspondence. There are two pieces of correspondence. If I could have a motion to receive both. Councillor Arneson, second on receipt. Councillor Whitmarsh, discussion on receipt. Seeing none, I'll call the question. This is on receipt. Just voting on the receipt. Okay. Carries unanimously. And so, any questions on either one of them? Councillor Arneson.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I got to get used to talking in this direction now. It's opposed to going the other way. I had a question, through Your Worship, to staff. I noticed in the report it talks about a 15% increase, I believe, in the number of taxis, and I'm wondering if Council is willing, if we can put a condition on there. I think we need to have more accessible units as part of these applications, and if we could prescribe a certain percentage of their new taxis to be accessible to their fleet, I think that would be most helpful.
So then your motion will be to refer this application to the licensed inspector with a comment that more accessible cabs be added. Is there a number or just increased?
Yeah, I actually would say I'd give it a percentage. So say if they have 15 new cabs, that 1/3 of them should be accessible. That would be.
So that's our comment. So.
Yeah.
And Mr. Backen, the licensed inspector can take the comments under consideration, but it's not binding. Is that correct?
It's correct. It's just our advice.
Okay. Is there a seconder to that? Councillor Richter, discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question on G1.
I guess my button must not.
Oh, sorry. Your button. Did you request to speak?
I did.
Okay, I'll cancel the vote and push your button again. So there it is. Yeah, you must have done it.
Oh, Your Worship. Now I appreciate the amendment here, but is that the right number? Right now it says they have 7 accessible taxis. So are we saying that's going to be how many? I don't know what the number is. So, I mean, I find it difficult to put a number on it because I'm not sure what the number should be. More is better, I suppose. More is always better, especially with bacon.
Okay, so a question for the mover then, if you could perhaps.
Thank you, Councillor Long. My logic is actually that as an aging population, so in addition to people that have handicaps or are disabled, we are growing, and those are the individuals that I feel are most in need of having these kind of services. So if we're not providing them on an incremental basis, I'm concerned we're going to fall behind. I think it's by 2030. People such as myself will be 30% of the population as senior citizens. So I think that is a movement in the right direction, and it's still discretionary. And if the licensing decides that they don't want to implement that, that's something else. But I feel if we don't try and make these proactive measures, then we'll be falling behind.
Thank you, Zach. Yep.
I'm confused because the form here says that they have 25 taxis, of which 8 of them are accessible already. So is that over 30%?
So on the additional, that's what you're asking for, the additional,
Oh, I see,
Yeah,
okay.
on their additional
okay.
unit.
I think that's was the intent.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'll call the question on that. Label it G1. That carries unanimously. And so anything else? Okay, we'll move on to minutes of committees. H1 is Agriculture Advisory and Economic Enhancement Committee of September 26th. Could I have a motion to receive? Councillor Davis, seconder. Councillor Kunst, discussion, errors, or omissions. Call the question on H1. Carries unanimously. Move on to associations and other government agencies, Joint School District 35 and Municipal Liaison Committee minutes receipt. Councillor Long moves receipt, seconder. Councillor Kunst and Councillor Richter.
Yeah, I had a question about the wording in number 4 on page 2. Well, the school board would like to make it more clear that they don't approve development and that space is available currently within the district, but there may not be space in the local catchment. Are they saying that they don't want any more development in Willoughby?
Mr. Backen, the way I read it is that they just want people to be aware that it might not be in that catchment. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship. That they can't take a position on development. The legislation requires them to make sure that there are school, spots available for anyone in their district, but it may not be in the closest school or in the catchment. So they're trying to actually articulate that more clearly, that is their principle that they operate under.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so for the discussion, I'll call the question on I1. That carries unanimously. And other business, there is a motion, and just a little clarity, I could ask Mr. Backen or Ms. Bauer just for some clarity on this motion. As I understand it, the motion that was made on May the 7th, 2012, had a end date of 2015. Therefore, this motion is required by council if we wish to proceed, and it would make it enduring. So it would take a motion contrary of council to change it. Is that correct? What this motion will?
That's correct, Your Worship. Back in 2012, when the first concept was passed, it was done for the term. We think there was one done the term thereafter, but we know we have to have such a motion for this term. Our suggestion is not to simply make it for this term, but to make it enduring going forward so that it will stand unless council provides us with other direction. And the motion is to simply cover the costs of council members that wish to participate or attend the UBCM, the FCM, and the LMLGA.
Okay, thank you. Could I have a mover, please?
Move it.
Councillor Richter, seconder. Councillor Arneson. Discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question on J1. And it carries unanimously. Is there any other business?
Yes.
Councillor Richter.
Okay, in our items distributed today, item number 11 is a noise complaint concerning the Oak and Thorn restaurant, I believe, which is up in Walnut Grove. And I'm just wondering if staff will be investigating this. Apparently the noise is quite substantial, keeping her up at night.
Mr. Seffi.
Your Worship, thank you. Staff is aware of the issue and has been for quite some time. In fact, staff has taken decibel readings, and they have been within the permitted, thresholds of the bylaw. Having said that, staff will continue to work with the complainee or the establishment to see what measures could be taken to reduce the impact and provide some comfort for the neighbors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So staff are going to keep monitoring the situation. Sounds like they just need to turn their base down or something. I also have a notice of motion that I'd like to put forward for the next meeting. Whereas Council now has annual facilitated priority setting sessions where it sets overall goals for the 4-year term and monitors progress annually towards those goals. Whereas the Council Priorities Committee is now somewhat redundant and is used mainly to move items off the regular Council agendas. Whereas Council business should be discussed by Council in open public meetings and a reduction of committees will best facilitate this. Therefore, be it resolved that the Council Priorities Committee be dissolved as it is no longer needed. Thank you.
Is there any other business? Seeing none, I'll ask for motion to terminate. Councillor Davis, seconder. Councillor Whitmarsh, all those in favor, show of hands, opposed, carried. Thank you.